A normal water well, 6-inch diameter casing, which is the normal size for a domestic well, is somewhere around $20 a foot, including the casing, but not the pump. So then you got to buy a pump on top of that. The bigger the diameter you go, then of course proportionately more money. So you double the size of the well, you quadruple about the cost of drilling it because of the dimension. You're getting 4 times the capacity then.
Let's say 150 foot, how do they know when they hit water?
Oh, how do they know when they hit water? They have to monitor continuously what's coming out. So they were logging like every foot or every 2 feet what the material was. There's a guy taking samples just as fast as he could of the material coming up out of the ground. And also they know by how much water's coming out of the ground how much they've hit. And so as they hit a vein of water, their flow increases on their return water coming back up out of the hole. And so they know exactly when they hit a seam of water every time as they're going down. Just the driller just, you know, and once you've done a few, it's become just second nature to know. And they know exactly the material. They know what the substrata looks like. By the gravel that's coming out, they can tell by the different looks of the gravel what the different materials are. And when they hit another layer, because it'll change color, change texture, the size will change of the particles coming out, all kinds of real obvious things. Then when they're done, then they can also go in and put a little television probe down in there and look at it. And they will actually then drop a camera down in the well and video the depth of the well for the archives. And that you can see, as that video camera drops down, you can see the water coming in from all the different aquifers, all the little pores where it actually is coming into the hole before they case it. Now once it's cased, obviously you can't see any of that. In this case, we only had to case it down about 30 feet. When we got through all that rubble of surface rock and soil and got into the hard basalt, we went about 10 feet into the hard basalt and we didn't have to case any further because the basalt held its shape. But you get into where you have soft, fractured areas, or where there's, and you hear people say, well, I got some sand in my well. I got a problem with sand in my well. Well, that's because down here in one of these layers, there's layers of sand in there that had been deposited eons ago, and you drilled into here and this was a bunch of sand. Well, as you're sucking the water out, you suck the sand with it. It comes up your well, and you're sucking all this sand in, and that's a real common problem because the sand area was a real easy media for the water to flow. So you have a lot of water right there, but you're also going to have a lot of sand. Well, now one thing they can do when they're developing that well is they can put a big pump in here and just try to suck as much sand out as they can down around there, and then they pour a load or two of gravel down the well and try to fill that area that they've sucked void of sand, fill it up with gravel from the surface. When they jet that gravel down in there, and then they re-drill out the center core of the gravel so that it opens the hole again. So what they'll do is they'll pump hard and try to suck an area out around it that might be full of sand, and then fill it full of gravel. Pour gravel back down the hole and hope that that'll all fill up. That whole area will fill up with gravel, and then the sand would have to fight its way through this gravel packing before it got into the pump. So it acts like a filter down in the well. And it works pretty good. It's pretty effective in some areas. Another thing is you sure want to make sure you have a contract with the driller so that you know what he's obligated for and you know what you're willing to pay for. Because there are a lot of dry holes that do occur in this world. And that's a real expensive dry hole. You go down there and you're paying 20 bucks a foot or so for a giant post hole, and it ends up being worthless. So you can be really hung out. So you need to have an agreement with your driller. Number one, you know, it has to be straight And true, how much casing is he going to put in? What is the price with and without casing, depending on what you hit in the substrata? Those kind of, how deep are you going to go before you call it halt? They tried to drill wells just north of the freeway out here off of Clinton Street. They thought they were really going to put in a nice little subdivision up here. Every house has a right to a ½ acre of water, and it was subdivided into, I don't know, maybe ½ acre plots or ¼ acre plots. No city water accessibility. Just on the other side of that great big water tank down here along the freeway. The first person bought a lot there, started drilling. And they kept drilling. And they kept drilling. They got down 500 feet and were getting about a teacup a minute out of that well. So they had to abandon the well. Then they abandoned the whole project because there was no water. You can't have a house without water. And so all those lots went for naught. Now they put a grape vineyard on it, and somehow they've talked the city into boring under the freeway, and now they got city water over to the grape vineyard because there's no water there. And so they're buying city water to water that grape vineyard, and it sounds pretty expensive, but really vineyard doesn't take a lot of water here in this valley. It's all on drip, and it's very water efficient.